All right, welcome everyone. We are here at a special call session of the Athens-Clarke County Mayor Commission on Friday, June 14th, 2024, to consider some old business, some new business, and to enter into an executive session for attorney-client conference to discuss director pension engagement, and then also to discuss personnel matters. All right, I'm going to ask the acting clerk to call roll for us.
Davenport.
Here.
Link. Taylor.
Here.
Wright.
Present.
Fisher. Here. Poole.
Here.
Culpepper.
Here.
Myers.
Here.
Thornton. Handy.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. I appreciate that very much. All right, we do have an opportunity for public input, and given the intimacy of the room, if you would like to provide public input, you can simply stand, let us know your name and place of residence, and then, as always, you'll have 3 minutes to provide input. And the clerk has a clock in front of her. It will turn green when you begin speaking, yellow when you have 30 seconds remaining, and red when you thumbs up. And I will thank you for your presence here today. So, is there anyone who would like to provide public input on this fine Friday morning?
Good morning, y'all. I'll go first. It won't be 3 minutes, I guarantee it. Good morning. A quick statement for a minute. I hope y'all can support the EMS MOU, including the CBO from Commissioner Myers. If passed, will greatly improve the public safety chain of police, fire, and EMS. We are only as strong and safe as our weakest link.
And just leave your name for the
Oh, I'm sorry, Bob Gadd in Winterville.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to provide public input this morning?
Hey, Sam Raffle, 230 Spalding Circle, Athens, Georgia. Here to speak in favor of the CDO put out for the EMS MOU that's been brought forward by Commissioner Myers, Sewell, and Davenport. And I appreciate all the work that they put into this. As you know, public safety is police, fire, and EMS, and it needs to be as public as possible. I think these changes in the CDO are a big step forward towards transparency, and I appreciate y'all's support. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sam. Would anyone else like to provide public input?
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, member of the commission, John Bansel, Vice President of Operation National EMS. I want to thank Commissioner Myers first and foremost for working with us on the language that is drafted, as we are in full support of this MOU as well. It provides a lot of extra transparency and a lot of extra public safety to the Athens system. As they're the new vice president of the organization, my goal is to provide outstanding patient care and provide good service to people as we've become a more focused people organization. So we are 100% support of this MOU that has been drafted between the joint government and our Piedmont Athens and St. Mary's. So we thank the commission for their consideration and time, and thanks for hearing us out.
Thank you, John. Is there anyone else who would like to provide public input on any item of old or new business? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and come to commission action. First order of business is an old business item that was held over from last week, and that was a zoning regarding 247 Pulaski Street, along with some associated addresses. And so this is a project that Commissioner Wright has been working on. So Commissioner Wright, I'll turn it over to you to describe for your colleagues the modifications and then make a motion.
Right. Well, I'll start off with a motion to have your support to accept the commission defined option. It's in the packet. I've got a little handout for you as well. Obviously, this hasn't gone through staff, but it gives you an idea of what the applicant has pinpointed as the peak on Reed Street for a safe crosswalk. The staff will validate that as the process goes forward. And then you see on Newton where the sidewalk is going to be 6 foot, no beauty strip to help with more of the vegetation space inside. So I make a motion that we accept the commission defined option.
Second.
All right, got a motion from Commissioner Wright and I have a second from Commissioner Link. Commissioner Link, any follow-up remarks?
No, thank you, Commissioner Wright, for working on this. Yeah, I appreciate that we've been able to save some of those trees and still provide some pedestrian access.
Say,
Any remarks from the members of the body? Commissioner Davenport?
Blake, thank you, Mike, for saving those trees. It's important, to me and to a lot of residents in Athens. Thank you for your home.
I know I'm late, but that was what my comment was to thank, because I got your text this morning, and I do think this is the way to go.
All right, there's an ordinance associated with this. Attorney Director, can you read that for us?
An ordinance to amend the code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, with respect to special use approval in the CB Commercial Downtown West End District for 4 parcels of land at 247 Pulaski Street, 260 Newton Street, 270 Newton Street, and 363 West Hancock Avenue, comprising approximately 2.04 acres and for other purposes.
Thanks, Attorney Director. Commissioner Culpepper.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm going to recuse myself.
Okay, appreciate that. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And please note 1 recusal for the record from Commissioner Culpepper. All right, we are going to move on to item number 2, and this is the revised EMS Memorandum of Understanding with Piedmont Athens Regional Medical Center. We, of course, supplement the service to the tune of about $100,000 a year. And so I will ask Commissioner Myers, she'll make a motion and any remarks.
Yes, I have a motion to approve this CDO.
Second.
Okay, and I just want to make sure that everyone understands it and also thank all the people who contributed to it. It really has, the CDO is 4 different points that add to what's already there. And the first one really has to do with what the staffing is, and was just a note to clarify the staffing. And I really thank National EMS for coming back and updating that with the current staffing, because these are all the MOU that we have is an amendment to the 2008 level of service. And there's some things that have changed since 2008. So that's just wonderful that we have that in writing. We have an indicator asking for some in our quarterly and semi-annual reports about some raw data, not averages on the daily number of ambulances in ACC with paramedics, which is their goal anyway, so it should be 100%. And to make sure that the total response time actually is in terms of a percentage of calls instead of a mean, which is great, and opens up an opportunity to talk about some of the fee structures. Again, something that was actually in the 2008 level of service agreement. So I want to thank Bob and Sam for all their work advocating, and for National for their work now updating this. And hopefully this is the beginning of some fruitful, transparent conversations about what's going on, because it sounds like we're all want the best thing in terms of emergency response for our community. So I'm really happy to get to this point.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any follow-up remarks, Commissioner Gould?
Mostly a ditto, and big thanks to Commissioner Myers for taking the lead on this CDO, which I think does some important tweaks. I did want to specify that there's 2 CDOs you see in the agenda packet. This is the most recent one, which is called the 5:09 p.m. June 13th one. And that's to reflect the final update we got from National on what types of EMTs to use. So just so we know which one we're using.
Right. It is the 509. And in fact, I think that was our intermediary Piedmont, just to give credit where credit is due for our communications late in the afternoon. So.
All right. Any further questions or remarks from members of the body? All right. We've got a motion from Commissioner Myers and a second from Commissioner Gould. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? All right. Third item of old business today is approval of Georgia Square Mall CBA effective date document. Attorney Drake and Council work on this. Attorney Drake, thank you very much. As I do know, we've got Dan McRae, who is available for any question. But Judd, I might ask you just kind of as we begin, if you could highlight maybe the cornerstones or substantive elements of this.
Sure. I think I might go ahead. You know,
Yeah, let's do that.
Or you
Yeah, to call him.
No,
go ahead. If I can figure out.
Dan McCray.
Hey Dan, how are you this morning?
Yeah, all is well. Good morning.
Good morning. We're in our meeting, our special call meeting, and it comes to the agenda item related to the Georgia Square Mall redevelopment project. And the mayor
Right.
requested us to start by kind of giving an overview of what the commission is being asked to approve this morning. I've got to pull that up from my computer real quick.
Before we had computers, we would just have a box full of paper. Read that to us. Did y'all hear that latest lawyer joke?
Close my computer up and go over there and do that. All right. Okay. This morning, the mayor and commissioner are being asked to approve or accept items related to the outstanding conditions. The conditions necessary under section 6.6 of the community benefits agreement for the Georgia Square Mall redevelopment project. The conditions necessary for the community benefits agreement to become effective and have an effective date. And so if the commission approves and accepts these items this morning, the effective date will be established as June 14th, 2024. I'll go through the items and Dan will explain a little bit about what this means and where we go from here. So the first thing is to approve the proposed transit ground lease. The commission is being asked to approve proposed transit ground lease for the transit facility located at the Georgia Square Mall redevelopment project, to be located there. As you'll recall, there was an issue related to the belt lease and some encumbrances that had to be removed. To help satisfy belt, we went through staff work with design professionals from the 11 group, or the owners, as they're referred to, the CBA, to help address belt's concerns. And at the last regular commission meeting, the mayor and commission approved the site plan, which incorporated those design criteria and allowed for the encumbrance against the title related to the belt facility to be removed. So this transit ground lease requires us to follow those design requirements. And if we seek a change and we do need it, we have to work with the developer to get consent from that, because that would mess up their agreement with belt. The other thing this does is it approves the acknowledgement of execution document between ACC Gov and the owner. That's a document that's required under section 6.6 of the CBA as well. And what it does is establishes the effective date of the CBA community benefits agreement, which will be June 14th, 2024. It acknowledges that the conditions related to required for the effectiveness of the CBA to be satisfied, and also sets the actual amount of payment limitation under the TAD bonds. And that's a document and was attached, the form of the document was attached to the CBA. Also, The commission is accepting the verification report, the supplemental verification report, which was prepared by the verification agent, as a requirement of ensuring that the owner is able to carry out the first stage of the horizontal infrastructure necessary to complete phase 1A. The next item is the commission is accepting the closing certificate of the owner. Section 6.6 of the CBA also requires conditions to the effectiveness of the CBA that the owner deliver to the ACC governor a certificate evidencing that it's not in default or any terms and conditions of the CBA in such a manner that have a material adverse effect on the project or any phase of the project. And so they delivered that closing certificate. You're just being asked to accept it. The next thing is approving an amendment to the CBA. This amendment is for several purposes. One is it's not acknowledging the form of the three items we just discussed. Acknowledging that we're approving the form of the acknowledgement, the setting the form of the verification agent report, and approving the form of the ground lease. We wanted to make sure that this was in the minutes, but also was reflected. I think the developers want that as well. That's reflected in the document that we part of this transaction. So that's part of it. The other big things for amending the ground lease is it's amending the ground lease to say that the new development site plan for the transit station redevelopment project is now part of the CBA. Before, that level of detail wasn't in the CBA, so that's basically it's adopting and saying that those items, the detail set forth in the ground lease is hereby incorporated and adopted as part of the as part of the community benefits agreement design requirements. It is important to note developers did work. I think this may have been talked about at the last meeting. The developers did agree to handle the stormwater flow off that site rather than us having to clean it, and that was some significant savings. That's another thing that's memorialized in the documents. Also amends the CBA to substitute a new phase table, which basically is moving everything back 9 months, start dates and completion dates. That phase table is attached. Changing the phase table, which is part of the CBA to reflect that change. And finally, we're amending the community benefits agreement to add as a condition to reimbursement of any advance of TAB funds pursuant to a requisition request from the owner. Requires that we be satisfied with the amended stage declaration of easements and restrictions. And what that relates to is, as we continue to work this project, we actually, Dan brought in a real estate attorney from his firm to look at this issue, but we continue to be, our biggest concern is that we be able to build a facility that we want to build. And what we learned was that there is currently an amended stage declaration of easements and restrictions that controls that whole site. And while the owners told us, that's not going to affect you, we wanted to make sure that we had the right to review and approve it, and it didn't affect us. And so we said, well, I'll tell you what, if it's not going to affect us, then you won't mind if we put in there that you can't get money from the TAG unless you're satisfied with this document. So I think that's a good protection that's been added into the document as well. We need to make sure that there's no issues there. And I think that having control of money, that's going to be a good way to make sure there's no issues. And the final thing, that's the amendments to the CBA. The final thing is approving the ESCO agreement between ACC government owners and Sanofi. As a condition to the effective date of the CBA, the community benefit requires the ACC government owner to enter an ESCO agreement, and it requires the owner to place in the escrow amount equal to 12 months payment of the cost of the verification agent. That's estimated by the verification agent. So you confirmed this morning that there's $40,000 have been placed into an escrow account to pay the verification agent, and also the services that the verification agent has rendered to date. They've received I received text from him this morning confirming he was paid $40,000. So it's important y'all understand, the legal and professional costs under the terms of the CBA are required to be paid by the owner, and they paid for verification agent costs, also paid, Mr. McCrae's costs. Dan estimates, at this point, they paid him well over $100,000 for his costs today. And he confirmed that he had payment through Monday of his invoices, and he's continued to work up to the last minute. So he's agreed that we got an email confirmation from them saying that they'll pay the updated amount once we get through this, but it's impossible. And Dan worked through it yesterday, so I feel like they've satisfied that requirement that they, and the escrow account has been opened. We worked with Synovus on that. They reviewed the escrow agreement, and they've actually already they agreed to go ahead and take the deposit of funds prior to getting the fully executed copy of the escrow, because they've seen the escrow, they've seen the agreement. So that is all the items that are you're being asked to approve. I thought it'd be helpful. Dan and I discussed. I know you have questions, but if he first kind of says, what does this mean now that we've established the effective date? Moving forward. Dan, you want to kind of take that conversation from here?
I'd be happy to do that, Judge. Good morning, everybody. And I thought Judge's memo was a good one about the actions before the commission today, and it's a little bit of a trip down memory lane to hear the discussion of everything that's gone into this. It's been quite a bit of work. You all may remember the process that we went through and all of the work that the commission and others had to do to even get the community benefits agreement approved. And there were some open items which led us to provide for conditions to the community benefits agreement being effective. So the second round of hard work has been just to get the conditions cleared, and as Judd mentioned, some of that remains to be done, and that's why we have the protection built in against draws being made until the rest of what is needed, and that's primarily real estate in nature, are in hand. And what this means for us is it's kind of like what Winston Churchill said after the Battle of Britain. Everybody was happy they won the Battle of Britain, but Sir Winston said this isn't the end. It's not even the beginning of the end, but it's the end of the beginning. So we're now at the end of the beginning and ready to perform, or have the developer perform, the actual redevelopment of the Georgia Square Mall. The phase table, the new phase table that Judd mentioned, has the new effective dates. And in the course of that progress, the performance of the agreement by the developer, the commission, there are a number of protections and safeguards and guardrails in there to keep the project on track, to make sure that we get what we're supposed to get, and that if conditions aren't satisfied or obligations are breached, that there's an exit ramp for us on this deal. There, for example, termination rights, their development milestones. I'll just mention in passing that the new phase table provides for the start of initial construction to the January 30th next year. The termination provision of the CBA, there's a clause in there that still says 6/30/24, but I think the new phase table makes that read January 30th next year. I don't know why they had the 30th instead of the 31st, but the 30th it is. So I think that, first of all, the commission can be proud, and our other stakeholders too. I mean, the school board, for example, the public's input has been valuable. Judge done yeoman's work, and ACC staff has been wonderful to work with. But this really is an outstanding example of the right way to do these deals. And as I said once before, I think that what Athens is doing will be emulated by others as we go forward. But as I said before, this doesn't mean it's over. We can take a little bit of a victory lap now, but there's a lot of work to be done. But we're in a pretty good place here on Friday, June 14th. So I'm happy to answer any specific questions, but that's the overview that Chad was looking for.
Thanks for that, Dan. I appreciate it. And Judd, thank you for kind of providing the highlight of those bullet items. I'd entertain a motion at this point.
I want to make a motion for us to move forward with this proposal and with the ordinance that was read by Judd.
All right, so there's a motion for approval of these documents by Commissioner Fisher. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, we've got a second from Commissioner Wright. All right, any further remarks?
Yes, a couple things. And I talked with Judd on yesterday. The one thing I thought we might want to consider was maybe put this on hold, make sure we had all the information that we needed. But I want to make sure that all the T's was crossed and the I's were dotted. And this morning, it sort of cleared my mind that those questions had been answered. There was some of my concern from the financing perspective, had they secured a bank loan and what other dollars was going to be used in order to get this project started. I do want my colleagues to know that we have not spent any money. And I want the public to know we have not spent any money from the Clarke County government. Even if they walked away, it wouldn't cost us anything. It'd still be on our tax roll because it's owned by somebody else. So right now, we haven't spent any money. All the attorney fees have been paid by the company and by that group. So I think, like Dan said, I think we're in a good place. With interest rates going up and the deal this big, there's expected to be some delays. There's 2 projects in District 5 that was voted on 2 years ago, still have not came forward. So people can't get financing. And that's difficult because the interest rates have gone up. So to finish up this, think about all the protections that we got in place, and we have to trust the attorneys for what they're telling us. I think we need to move forward with this. Let this project get off the ground, and let's move forward.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Wright, any follow-up?
I just wanted to clarify that we've got option A, one, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. There's an attachment for each one. The work that's been going into this is substantial, and I really appreciate, among all the other priorities, that all of these legal documents you guys have other stuff going on too, and getting this forward to the end of the beginning is good stuff.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Gould?
Yeah, hoping to feel as confident as my colleagues across the table, but I do have some questions for Mr. McCray. Can you hear me, Dan?
I sure can.
So the first, I think you and Judd spoke to this, but I just want to make sure I'm understanding it clearly. So when I read your memo and you talk about how this schedule has a schedule 4 draws, but a typical agreement would also have 2 draws, which this one doesn't yet. Is that fully addressed by the provision you and Judd spoke to around us withholding money until we get XYZ things, or is that still left kind of a bit of an unknown?
I can answer that this way. It's addressed and covered indirectly. The provision Joe was referring to earlier had to do with the quality of the title to our transit station site. And there is a particular provision about that. So going back to what would happen if the financing didn't come through for some reason, there are milestones that have to be met. And if those milestones are not met, there are consequences. And in a case I recall, I think it's the start of horizontal infrastructure, something like that. But if the developer doesn't make the progress that the CBA requires, we have the ability to shut down draws and even terminate the CBA. And that, if he doesn't have capital, he's not going to be able to perform. So he will miss those deadlines and we'll be able to invoke our remedies. It's covered that way.
Okay. So to put it another way, maybe more plainly, do you feel like that indirect coverage is strong enough to make sure that it happens, or can we end up in some kind of theoretical future where there's litigation around what we're obligated to?
Well, we need to all be aware and conscious that the fact that the conditions are being cleared does not guarantee success. All it does is to shoot the starter gun for the race to start to get the redevelopment completed. So it could still fail to go forward. It could run into difficulties so that the nature of the project, we've received a request to change it. All of that is possible. And of course, if you don't have capital, then it's not just possible, but it's probable. But in terms of the safeguard that condition represents, and we focus particularly on the Phase 1A horizontal infrastructure because that was kind of the canary in the coal mine. If that test was passed, then that's a further assurance that the developer will do what the developer is supposed to do. Another assurance is the fact that they have invested quite a bit of money in the acquisition of the mall, so they have skin in the game there. But the condition was based on an investment banker working for us, evaluating what he was shown, and that was not shown to us because of financial confidentiality that the developer insisted on. And the investment banker has come back and said, in my professional judgment, the developer is adequately capitalized, and that's all the condition requires. If it were, if this were a loan instead from, Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley or, somebody, and we had the actual loan document in front of us, it's still possible for complications to arise under the performance of that because, as I mentioned in the memo, any loan document is going to have conditions. If the inspector goes out and what's built doesn't pass inspection, then there's not going to be a draw funded. So we still have the normal construction risk. But as has been said, we're not at financial risk. What we're doing is tying up the increment, from the project, the value contributed by the development of the mall goes into the TAD to pay these draws. If there's no increment, there are no draws. So that's an indirect form of protection. And it's not like there's a lost opportunity. We don't have other, as mentioned, in these financial conditions, we don't have other developers knocking at our door. So it's it's sort of ultimately a business decision. Is this a good deal? Is this one that we can take? But I can tell you that the investment banker's report, the verification report, did satisfy that condition. And from a legal perspective, I have never seen a better legal deal for a community than what Athens has. Again, that all the paper in the world doesn't solve a real world problem. Things can still happen, but in terms of the legal and finance side of this, I think we're where we're bargained to be. And in terms of disputes, we have a dispute resolution process in the community benefits agreement. Disputes can happen, and it's just the way the world is. But I think that we have been through, a lot of tough issues. The state of title on this mall, we found a encumbrance having to do with parking, and we this has been scrubbed, and we made provisions to take care of that. And the developer is a businessman, and the negotiations are, they're real negotiations. Part of the reason that, in fact, in my book, the reason that it seems like y'all are getting stuff at the last minute is that people are deadline oriented, and that's great if you meet the deadline. But if you miss the deadline, then you need to terminate the deal to have another deadline, and that's what Judd and I and everybody have been contending with. But that said, we know the developer. We don't have another developer. We've done I think, a great deal of due diligence. If you go back and look at the beginning of the community benefits agreement with all the reports and studies that have been done even before now, I don't think anybody can say that the commission hasn't done its job. So again, from a strictly legal perspective, if I felt like I needed to warn y'all against something, or if Judd did, you can be sure we'd do it. We have to tell you that, you know, it's not over. Success is not guaranteed. Things can happen. But I do think that before the commission is a acceptable proposition if the commission sees fit to accept it.
Thank you. That was helpful. I do have just two other questions. I appreciate your point about being deadline oriented, and this is more common first, just that I don't know what we can do in the future to treat the deadline for this body to be, you know, more than 24 hours before we're expected to vote on a large series of very complicated documents. So that's maybe a question more for the room than for you, Dan. But you know, every step of the way we've been getting a lot of information with very, very little time to digest it. And I don't think that's a particularly fair, responsible place to put us in. So I think we need to kind of maybe reconceive of what we consider a deadline. But the other two questions I have, I think you largely covered this, but I just want to make sure, you know, because I'm reading your memo too. You know, you talk about the verification report retaining the sentence that, as you put it, envisions a later traditional or conventional construction loan. So when that happens, can you just kind of explain to me what the process is for like what the verification agent does and how this body or ACC Gov or the MARC or whatever is involved in that at that stage?
Well, I'm happy to do that. We have extensive provisions in the community benefits agreement regulating draws and the data that has to be presented, and the verification agent. The verification agent's going to be with us all through this. You know, the developer doesn't get any money unless the verification agent goes through what is submitted. So, and that will involve evidence of the investment having been made, being eligible costs. Y'all may remember sometimes heated discussion about what draws could be made for and what they could not be made for. Again, you've got a pretty good list of what draws can't be made for. And some of that, a lot of that's financial in nature. I mean, what is this? So we have somebody working for us sitting at the table checking that. I don't know that going forward, the commission itself, I would imagine the CBA is written from the perspective of this being an administrative matter as opposed to a commission matter. But these draws are not going to be frequent. So if the commission wanted to have a vote on each and every draw, I think you could do that. But I do share your frustration at the last minute nature of this. Judd and I have done everything we could, but you know, it's not us that have to meet requirements. It's the developer that has to meet requirements. And you know, if you had a hard and fast deadline, nothing will be considered after X day, that might make a difference. But it all has to be evaluated in terms of the seriousness of what's being considered and whether there are any lingering issues and that sort of stuff. But we did everything we could to get this to you as quickly as we could. And I anticipate the commission will need to act again. That's just in the nature of these deals. When we were getting this thing approved, I actually said we're going to be living with these folks for 30 years, and we will. And things will come up. We don't have any scheduled. I guess that's all I can tell you. We don't have any scheduled commission events after this one.
Thanks. That pleasantly foreshadows my last question, which is about the schedule. You know, so this is bumping things back 9 months while we're just at the end of the beginning. So, can you speak to what we should anticipate in terms of whether this new phase table is really realistic and can we expect it to be met? And what do further requests for further extensions look like? What consequences should there be? I mean, on paper, it sounds like they've got hard deadlines here to get this stuff done by these dates, or we can dangle it over their head. But in practice, if they're part way along and they're going more slowly than we want, what happens there? We're just asked to decide whether to stay with them for another 30 years still. I guess how do we make the schedule meaningful? I guess is really the question here.
Let me point out there's provision for force majeure, events beyond their control in there. And, if that force majeure, of course, during COVID, force majeure was invoked all over the place, and that could happen again. And that if it's a true event of force majeure, then the developer's entitled to an extension. But if it's a case of missing a deadline, then we have to look and see how rigid the requirement in the CBA is. For example, this proof of financial responsibility that we're talking about is only applicable to the Phase 1A horizontal infrastructure. But this CBA is set up to basically, I'm trying to figure it out, to cage in the developer so that if they try to go in a direction they're not supposed to, or try to go backwards or don't do anything, there's some flexibility in it. But basically there are obligations that if material ones are met and they're not cured, then we terminate the deal. The intention is not to have us locked into a bad deal where nothing happens for 30 years, or a bad deal where the wrong thing, something we don't want, is not happening, or some of the public benefit that we were promised is not being received. That's, as I said earlier, what we're giving up is tying up our incremental project increment for a period of time. And, within reason, that's okay. 30 years of nothing happening is not reasonable. I think we found us a pretty good exit ramp if material concerns came up and were not addressed.
Thanks for that, Dan. Like your notion of living together for 30 years, there's a lot of press in recent years about what they call extended adolescence, and many of us
that's right.
We know exactly how that rolls, but you continue to care for your loved ones. That's what I can say. I've got Commissioner Davenport and Commissioner Handy with some questions.
No questions. Just want to thank Dan McRae and the attorney's office. This was a very complicated read, but you guys hashed out all the details, so thank y'all for all y'all hard work, and look forward to 29 more years. Let's count them down.
Sure. I just want to ask our attorney just some questions about the facts and issues number 12, the proposed CBA for 3,700. Under affordable housing, it's listed as 20% of the units at 80% AMI, and it's my recollection that we had it at 60% AMI.
Ben, could you look at the CBA and see what it says related to that?
I was trying to find that.
Yeah.
I couldn't.
Yeah, let me see if I can find it real quick. There were some last minute discussions of that.
The last minute vote of it was 60%.
Yeah, I'm with Mike. I recall clearly that we landed at 60%.
Yeah, definitely.
I can read this to you. I did find it. It's in Schedule P, performance commitments. And item number 1 is affordable housing. Owners shall set aside and reserve 10% of the total multifamily residential units located in the project as affordable housing units consistent with the terms set forth herein for income eligible residents earning in the aggregate no more than 60% of AMI. It's adjusted by household size.
We just need to.
The CBA controls our agenda,
Right.
just an agenda.
Right.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that
Good catch.
wasn't what they're signing.
Yeah.
It may have been so always in the way it was before we changed it. That was at the last minute. We can note that change.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep. So
It's facts and issues number 12.
10% at 60%.
20%, was it 20, was it 2%? 10% for 20 years.
10% and 60%.
60/20. Yeah. Yes.
That is really huge because that definitely would have been a deal breaker for me.
Yeah, so that would be a great example of when I was trying to read through a lot of pages before this, I didn't read through our facts and issues because I figured like I already knew what was in there. But, you know, when we approve stuff like this, we put ourselves in a weird position, y'all. We have our own documents saying things that don't match what we're trying to approve.
Mhm.
So, you know, I'm reading the room here. And maybe I do have one more question. What's the consequences of us holding this till our next meeting? Does that tank anything, or does it just delay everything a month?
You know, it looks to us like the developer has satisfied all of the conditions. And that does depend on, I mean, the acknowledgement is evidence of that. You know, the developer could claim that, you know, your approval is perfunctory and or administrative, and we satisfied the conditions, and it's over. I would not expect that from them. I mean, if the commission wanted to defer this, I would expect and insist that the developer honor that, and then if he pushed back on it, then you know we'd have to take stock of what the next step would be at that point.
Mike, I want to make sure you got all your questions.
Yeah, I was trying to find Schedule P in here somewhere, but I'll find it.
If you're looking at a PDF document, it's on page 80 of 128. This was not a short document.
Page 80. Thank you.
Page 80. Mm-hmm.
Carol, Mike's looking at that.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. They should be short. We don't have to make them long, but I just need to, you know, clarify this for myself and my thinking. I will say, Dan, when you say that, you know, that you and Judd would be warning us if this is not right, you know, that's what I felt when I was reading through those documents last night. I'm like, tell me that you're not warning us. So I appreciate you saying that. When you responded to Jesse before and talked about, you know, the sort of the loan being adequate, or the financing being adequately capitalized, is that like a legal term? Would you have raised that up and said dependably capitalized, you know, maximally capitalized is, or is that just, I don't know. I guess was that carefully chosen, the adequately? I would assume it was.
Yes, it was. I wrote that, and those are my words. You will find adequate capitalization several places in financial and legal documents. You don't find it every place, but because there's so many different ways.
Uh-huh.
If you've ever put together capital stacks, and I do that a lot, I mean, you have equity and semi-equity and subordinated debt and convertible notes, and you know, you just some of the stuff they put together on Wall Street is enough to make you pull your hair out. So you don't know what you're going to get, and particularly in this financial environment, you don't know what you're going to get. So what we got was a commitment from a related entity to make a loan. And so that's not what I expected. But I would imagine that a loan from another source on acceptable terms wouldn't be available for this project at this time. Whereas if you wait, the Wall Street Journal said today that the expectation in the financial markets now is for the first rate cut in September, and there may be two this year. So if that happens, things will look a whole lot different, you know, this time next year than it looks right now. So I kind of view, and this is just speculation, but I kind of view that loan agreement that's referenced as being a standby. That, you know, when the time comes when the money's needed, the understanding between those parties is that the guy with the capital will put it in if nobody else will. Now,
Okay.
And that's a call, that's a judgment call for the verification agent to make. He's seen all the documents, he's done the due diligence, and he's come back and said they're adequately capitalized, which is what the condition was.
Okay, so and when you mentioned like we don't have other developers knocking at the door, wouldn't they be I mean, Levin opens or the owner owns the property. Wouldn't they be knocking at that person's? That would they even be knocking at our door?
They would have been knocking at the door of the owner of the real estate before.
Right there. Okay. And then the other thing is just in terms of this, as I was thinking about this last night, I mean, you know, what we're looking at really is a risk here, right? And so I was just trying to think about this, and I just wanted you to, you know, verify if I'm thinking about this correctly. And you brought up the money in escrow, and I think I followed that correctly in that there being money there to pay the verification agent and the attorney fees. And you're talking about that's been paid up to right now, but do we have money in advance? I mean, is there money being put in there so the next payment will be there?
The money that was put in the escrow account is for the verification agent, and it's intended to cover 12 months of his services. And when it's depleted, it has to be replenished.
Okay, that's just what I wanted to check. And then the other, in terms of the risk, I'm thinking about this again. You know, one of the risks that we have involved in here is that we are planning on the transit center being here. So we are like sort of holding our breath on this. Like we got the transit center, if the whole thing falls through, the transit center plan like would go poof, right? So that's a risk. And then the other risk is, I mean, in terms of the development, yes, we haven't put any money into it, but you know, if they get through, if they get through phase one and do the horizontal infrastructure, that's for the plan they have. And if you know, poof, their financing goes away, that might make it harder, or I have no idea. You know, that would change the kind of development. That would narrow the scope, like someone who else would have to develop it using that infrastructure or pull it up and do it again. So and before things could get going. So those two, and of course that's not a risk to us because it's not our money, but it could delay another project going in there. So am I correct in that those are the risks that we're looking at?
I don't think that the land for the transit station is at any great risk at all, because we're going to get a 99-year ground lease and we can give them 60 days notice and get that at any time.
Okay.
So that's ours.
Okay, so we can move ahead on that. We could like move ahead on that, and the other stuff could fall apart. Okay, great.
That's right. You're correct about what would happen if the development failed for the rest of the mall redevelopment. I mean, if this developer can't do it, the real estate's not going to go away.
Mm-hmm.
And sooner or later, somebody will come in. I mean, and I'm not talking about this particular project. You would call the Resolution Trust Corporation and some of those things where assets fell to their proper value in terms of the market at the time. And when that happens, if it's a good deal, there's always somebody to come in and do it. And it might be different, but it would be up to us to approve it. I mean, I do think, and these are all very valid questions, and believe me, Judd and I have asked all of these and more of the developer, but we all need to be pulling for the developer to succeed with this, because a transit-oriented development there would just be wonderful. It'd be the halo effect, and you know, local governments don't. I'm preaching now. I'm sorry. I do conventions and presentations on this, but you know, local governments don't like risk, and Judd and I have had it suggested to us once or twice that we take some risk, and our response has been, "Hell no, we're not going to do that." In reality, though, you know, everything is not a lead pipe cinch, and the commission's judgment call on this is: do we tie up not the whole tab, but most of it, the increment from that project, as a step forward in trying to get a redevelopment executed that we like? And so that's what's before us today. And it's not without risk, but we've done everything we can to mitigate it. And if we can't, Judd and I can't make business decisions, or we're not investment bankers. But again, and please don't say yes thinking that nothing's ever going to happen, because I guarantee you over 30 years something will happen. I don't know what it is, but I know it will happen. But the question is it worth it to do it now? And that's the commission's decision. And again, if we felt like we had to tell you, oh, no, you do this, and you're going to stepping right into a big bucket of legal trouble, we'd be telling you that. That's our job.
Well, thank you very much for all that.
Of course.
Commissioner Thornton.
And I guess I am the infant in all of this, because my concern is where we'll be. The tag very much interests me, and I like everything that has been worked through. But what happens, I guess the risk I see is property taxes. I mean, that's a huge income for this local government. I mean, is that a risk if something crashes?
Well, I did an hour presentation yesterday at the sidebar conference.
Okay.
And we'll have them again in August, and you're welcome to. The fact of the matter is that we've got the but-for. There's no such thing as but-for test, incidentally. Those words aren't used in the redevelopment powers law or the development authorities law, but words to similar effect are in the redevelopment powers law. And so you invest back in the tax allocation district, the increment, in hopes of stimulating growth that otherwise you wouldn't get, and that's what we're doing. The alternative is to look at what the tax revenues are now, or better yet, before the owner bought this property, and if nothing were done, that's the high water mark. It would just go downhill from there.
Yeah.
So the revenues are tied up, and this is a very large TAD grant over 30 years. But the economic studies that we had done showed that there would be other substantial benefits besides property tax, not just within the TAD, but due to the halo effect around the TAD. And that's really why we're doing it. Yes, those, until the developers pay, and that may, his total amount, that may never happen. That's a risk he's taking. The local government won't be getting any taxes on the increment, but we will for the other property in the TAD. We'll get that. The non-property tax revenues will get that, and you have to compare and compete that result against the result of nothing happening. So, and that's the dilemma that elected folks and appointed folks and authorities have. What's the bottom line on this? What is it that I need to do? What's the least I can do? And this is the deal that's been negotiated, and it's just the best we were able to do.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Mike, I want to make sure you found that schedule.
Yeah, I see it in here. Okay. So as long as, maybe it'd be wise to change the facts and issues to match the.
That was the
People change that to match. It's already been done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, the vote is to approve these attachments,
The CBA.
not the agenda report. So if the agenda report gets updated based on what we approve, then in the record, in the minutes, it's.
I just don't. I've seen it before happen where people point to something that's written somewhere else, and it creates confusion.
It's being updated live.
So as a
It's updated.
Yeah.
Let's check. Let's check. Maybe
She'll save it as soon as we vote.
Jesse had another question.
Yeah, I guess I just want to share, the meticulousness that Mike is bringing forth on this, I share. think it's important for us to recognize we're talking about making a decision where we're bound up in this for 30 or more years, talking about millions of dollars. These things are likely to end up in litigation if anything goes sideways. And so anything that we don't have perfect strengthens the case of someone against us. So we know we're only approving the attachments, but whatever's in the agenda.
From a legal perspective, what's in those attachments, those documents is what's going to control. From a statement of agenda, item, I feel comfortable with that. Dan, don't you have that same level of comfort? I mean, we better hope.
Yes.
Yeah.
If I don't disagree, you can correct it. If I don't have any concern about them, they'll say, oh, that's what the agenda item said. You're approving what's in this document.
And there was, I heard Dan earlier note there's one other change that I don't know if we need to specify it, where the text of the document refers to a date that changes because of the schedule.
Yeah, I can point that out to you. It's in section something. 8.4C reads automatic termination on June 30 unless the owner has commenced initial construction. But the phase table pushes that date to January 30, 2025, and I think that controls.
So the motion would recognize that January date rather than the June date.
Yeah, that's part of it.
When we were going through this on the Mall Area Redevelopment Committee, the little committee that was with the school board members to bring this forward. Every time there was some change, there were all these other changes that had to happen over and over again. So when we get asked to make these amendments, it is super complicated. And I do super appreciate you, Mr. McRae, Judd, and everybody in your office for working on this till the end. And my tenor in the room today is not because I don't believe in this project. I want to see this project succeed. It's in District 6. It's been a huge priority for me, but it's hard to arrive with the level of confidence and clarity when you don't have any time to digest stuff. And I do put that on the developer more than our staff or you, Dan. But just a couple other things I want to say before we're done, because this is probably the last chance I'm going to get to talk about this on the commission, is this deal is not just unique because of how good our provisions are and all the things we get in the CBA, which is true. It is unique for that reason. And I trust Dan and Judd that it's uniquely good in terms of the legal strength too. But it's also unique in how much money they're getting from us. That was emphasized repeatedly when we talked about this. And so when we hear about this notion that there aren't people knocking at the door, people could potentially be knocking at the door if they knew the kind of deal they could get. And now different people own the property and everything, so what door to knock on even has changed. But I don't think we should be living under the illusion that there's just like zero other interested parties out there in the world or even in the region that could try to do a redevelopment project in this TAD or even on this property. This doesn't in any way change that I want to move forward with the folks that we're with now. But I think we should stay mindful that we can't just be, for lack of a better word, I'll say bullied into this, feeling of needing to vote with no time to review stuff on complicated things because there's some hard deadline. I mean, we were, if I'm being honest, it felt like there was a lot of pressure to have to approve stuff on a timeline for the sake of the developer to get their financing. And then we've learned since that a lot of the financing was probably there all along. And that begs the question to me, well, if the financing was there all along, why haven't they moved forward with anything yet? And it's probably because they're waiting for the market conditions to change so that they can diversify or change how they're financing. And all that's reasonable enough unless it keeps dragging on for years and years and nothing's happening. And so that's also where my concern around the schedule is. The impact of this development isn't just important because we want to see good things happen and have a halo effect. There's real impacts on the flooding that's happening in neighboring neighborhoods that is supposed to be remedied by the stormwater infrastructure improvements. There's real impacts on traffic, which this will to some degree at least a little bit help, which is a nightmare on Atlanta Highway. And of course the transit station is a huge part of it. I'm really reassured to learn that we can now move forward on that regardless. But there's real consequences for us not seeing this move forward, and there's real consequences for us continually being asked to extend. And so, I do hope that this schedule that we're approving today is really the one that is adhered to. And if these developers come back in January and I'm not with y'all anymore and they're asking for another extension, I hope that this commission will seriously consider whether that's appropriate. But with that in mind, I'm happy to support the motion today. I do really appreciate everybody on the ACC Gov team, and I do really appreciate everyone on the development team too. I'm not saying that they're acting in bad faith. I'm just saying that they're getting a very good deal, and they're playing hardball with us, even though they're smiling while they do it. And I think we need to be aware that we can play hardball as well.
Any other remarks from the body? All right, I do want to thank everybody around the table here for the stalwart supporters of this, through what is obviously a complex environment and a complex set of just even physical plans for a very large, more than 75 acre property. I want to thank Dan and Judd, and certainly want to thank the development team. Got Scott Haynes here from WNA Engineering. I certainly recognize that even with our own projects, we've run into just some of the logistical and financial challenges that are part and parcel of this era in modern life. I think about the challenge we've had replacing a swimming pool, and it's a much smaller project than the one we're talking about here. But I do think everybody's working into it. This is going to be transformational for that part of the community and the community at large. This really will be the single largest infusion of investment in a single project in the community ever. And so that's exciting. And I think we've got a great deal to look forward to. As everybody said, we're going to be at this table again around something. We don't know exactly what that something is, but something this big and multi-layered, no doubt we'll be seeing some more aspects of this. But I'm glad that in Dan's words, we are at least at the end of the beginning. So with that, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? All right, hearing none, motion carries. All right, thank you everyone for that. We do have some new business, and so I do need a motion for suspension of rules.
So moved.
All right, we've got a motion from Commissioner Thornton, and we've got a second from Commissioner Taylor for suspension of rules. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to new business. Item number 4 is an annual requirement that we have an ordinance to levy and assess taxes from the Clarke County Board of Education for the year 2024 as requested by the Board of Education. I'll ask Judd to read that ordinance for us.
An ordinance to levy and assess taxes for the Clarke County Board of Education for the Clarke County School District, Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, for the year 2024 and for other purposes.
Thank you, Judd. All right, is there a motion to that effect?
Second.
All right, got a motion from Commissioner Fisher and second from Commissioner Taylor. Any remarks, commissioners?
No, sir.
Any from any other member of the body? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none, motion carries. All right, next item of business is pursuant to section 4-101A of the charter. And I will gladly recommend Nikki Jones to serve as acting manager effective July 13th, 2024. For the remainder of that term of office of the manager or until the manager is appointed first. Request that you approve this recommendation and authorize me to execute an employment agreement related to Mr. Jones' service as acting manager, subject to Mr. Jones being required to sign an employment agreement to confirm acceptance of his appointment to serve as acting manager. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
So moved. There we go.
Deputy Jones, let's just be clear. Deputy Jones.
All right, the motion to Commissioner Myers and second Commissioner Phillips. Commissioner Myers, any remarks?
No, I'm just happy that we have Deputy Manager Jones here, and I've worked with him. I mean, you joined a little bit before I got on the commission, but as on the LRC, you've been nothing but responsible, proactive leader, really good relations with commission, and I am happy to have you step forward at this critical junction that gives me more confidence as we move forward. So thank you.
I find that God, I'm getting emotional with you. But anyway, you've come with so much knowledge and so much information, and you've done a great job communicating with the commission. And I don't think you think that no issue is too small or too big to address. And even my dog issue, you stepped in like a hero. So anybody who helps me with dogs and animals, you know y'all my favorite. But I am so pleased because I think you also have the skills and the knowledge and the compassion. Thank you.
Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, thank you. And again, congratulations, Mr. Jones, for your appointment. Some of us have a commission that would really support Nikki in this role and help him because they're still down one person in that office. So we need to really be supportive of him and surround him and offer all our support that we can get from us and with the community. And our vision out there that we're supporting our acting manager right now, and we support our staff that's doing the work here and that's really trying to get this community moving forward. So I just want to put that out there that we're not, at least for me, supporting 100% and going forward to make sure that we can pull together and continue to do the good work that we need to do.
Any others?
I appreciate you, Nikki. Thank you. I'm excited to.
I guess, Kelly, I wanted to follow up with our conversation the other day. And I guess we just have to wait because we're getting ready to go to take our break. But how is there a process that we as the commission should follow so we don't overwhelm him because he's short? I mean, not short.
Not sure.
Short of staff. That we should kind of, because before we were sending things and kind of, is there going to be a recommendation from you on how we, and maybe the July month off will help, but is there going to be some direction from you on how to proceed?
No, I think it's a great question, Commissioner, and then there are a handful of things. One is that, transitions are just inherently challenging for organizations, even when those transitions are supported by great people, because people are having to learn new aspects of their roles and take on different tasks. So my sort of informal recommendation that I would just ask for everybody to pursue is to be very focused in our work together. And of course, we're going to pursue this in a formal way at our August or September 2-day retreat. And that, of course, will be largely centered around our strategic plan. And a strategic plan needs to be just that strategic. You can't have a strategic plan in which you simultaneously pursue 75 different ends at the same time. So I think for Nikki as acting manager, for us, for the organization, and for the community, we need to say, we are really going to lean in heavily to kind of a handful of critical issues that we can coalesce around. So that's one important piece. And again, there's an informal part of that, and the formal part of that will be our updated strategic plan that we pursue through the late summer. The other piece of this is obviously kind of what the next months look like in terms of transition. And so while we were on a hiatus from formal meetings, obviously there's a lot of work that happens. Y'all are doing constituent service every day and doing some thought about these forthcoming plans. One of the things I'll be doing the next couple of weeks is laying out a timeline for selection of a permanent manager. So look for a memo likely in either very late June or very early July about that lays that out. And fortunately, we have some good models to pursue. Some of those we've done internally. Some of you were kind of on the hiring team that brought us Judd and brought us Gavin into their respective roles. We'll be pursuing a similar process with a national search. So be looking forward to that too. So those are the main things that I would.
So the things that were already on the assembly line, like there were some things I had going. So if Nikki cannot do or it's just, you know, like he got other fire. It would be okay for him to say, you know, Commissioner, can we revisit this later? And I won't be offended, but I want to make sure everybody else who already has stuff on the assembly line, if they get that kind of word, we're understanding of that.
Well, and in terms of that assembly line, I guess I'd probably chunk that into kind of like a couple of big pieces. There are those things that are sitting in committee right now in LRC.
No, but I'm talking about in our constituent work, our district. There were some things that I had going on. I'm going to let Nikki know, but I'm not going to be offended if he says this is not a priority right now. I just was wondering.
I think probably on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
I think Nikki will be in the best position to respond to that. And so definitely if you've got some things that are in process, whether those are planning and zoning or traffic management kinds of questions, definitely engage with Acting Manager Jones, and I think he can let you know, here's where those stand. But what is great is that, you know, as you heard over the last couple of months, you know, the staff size is expanding. So, you know, while in the manager's office, there are some openings that I think will be filled, at least on an interim basis. Community-wide, organization-wide, we're in pretty good shape. And I don't know, Nikki, you'd like to speak to that?
Just real quick, and I would say that we know that constituent services do not stop. We have a CRM, a customer relations management software, which we're trying to utilize, and that helps us track how long it takes us to get to each one of these things, what's actually in the queue. Sarah, Jeff Montgomery, and Ms. Jean are all working together on this. A lot of the stuff goes to Ms. Jean, she'll put it in there. Sometimes stuff comes to us, we'll put it in there. I say all that to say, you know, constituent services won't stop. We know that. So we're still going to be responsive to those things. But we do ask, you know, give some grace.
All right, I do have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Myers and a second from Commissioner Thornton. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing that motion carries, we really appreciate the willingness. All right, I do need a motion to enter into an executive session for attorney-client conference to discuss threat of pending litigation and then to discuss personnel matters. Got this motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, I have a motion from Commissioner Thornton and a second from Commissioner Fisher. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, I need a motion now to adjourn. Conclusion of that executive session.
Adjourn, so moved.
Second.
All right, got a motion from Commissioner Wright and a second from Commissioner Thornton. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. With Commissioners like 5 minutes break.
Yes.